So you said sometimes you need to reset, and you knew you did?
Yeah, I kind of knew in game that probably I should take a short break, go to the bathroom, and come back more focused, but I didn't do that. And knowing my own leak is starting off the game stuck and losing some significant pots. Nothing like huge for the game, but definitely
Mhm.
some significant ones. And that caused me to play a little more sloppy and off my normal game. And then also, just frankly speaking, Martin Cabral being at the table didn't help. I have nothing against Martin. I had never played with him in any tournaments or cash game before, but I know of his reputation and I know his kind of his whole spiel and his whole game strategy is to tilt the shit out of his opponents by constantly talking to them and trying to gain information and get under your skin. It's all fair game, you know. I've played poker for a long time. And I've dealt with players like him for many years and various forms of what he does. You know, I don't think it's unethical or anything like that, but it didn't help my situation that I was already losing. And Martin's constant talking at the table obviously didn't help. And I think he knew that. He was tilting everybody with his talking. And I think it was probably best in hindsight now, looking back, is to never have engaged with him. I think that probably would have helped me maintain my focus and I would have played much better.
Right.
So yeah, my rhythm was definitely off. My focus was off. And the last element I want to add was just the short time span of these games. You know, I think that's a huge element. Like when you see someone realize that they only have 2 hours left or 3 hours left of the stream and they know the stream is going to break, that definitely is a factor in affecting a lot of people's games, you know, like for example, like me, I was already down maybe a couple hundred, 300, and knowing that like the game's probably going to be gone after the stream. And I started forcing things a bit. Absolutely a bad habit of mine that I need to cut out.
Sometimes you just don't get the timing right. I mean, you were three betting very light in some spots, but you have to do that in some spots to get action. And you're
Yeah.
also playing the player. And I thought Cabral, having watched him before, I don't know him at all. In some ways, he was entertaining for the viewer. His, picking on Jungle and talking to him was interesting because I guess they played together before. He didn't know you, obviously. I don't think he didn't really go after you talk wise
No,
too much, did he?
more in just trying to extract information and trying to gauge how strong I was in hands. Definitely nonstop talking during hands with me.
So talk about the hand a bit and your surprise and why you bet the river and why you played the hand and your surprise when he did what he did.
This hand was actually very fascinating. You know, I don't play hands for this size that are this interesting that often, and I think this one definitely qualifies. I felt like I had a good grasp throughout the entire hand on every street, and I was actually fairly confident at the time that this bluff was going to get through. And just from the beginning, though, I think there's a key element that I went back and watched it, and I noticed that I was talking to Jungle while I was playing the hand pre-flop. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I think I was distracted. And had I not been talking pre-flop, might have changed some of my decisions post-flop. I didn't realize that he was from the middle blind. We're playing 100, 200,
Oh, right.
400, 800. There's an $800 straddle and
Right.
a $200 ante. I didn't realize that he actually called from the $400 blind. So, you
I
know, just from there, like not calling from the last blind, the straddle, the 800, if I had noticed that, I just think that like if he called from the last blind, which was Rampage in the 800, his range there is way wider. Just him calling from the middle blind, I think it's definitely more suited hands that he would cold call there and stronger ranges. With that said, like I was a little bit distracted pre-flop, so I raised and he just flat called. Rampage folded, his heads up. Flop came queen of clubs, seven of clubs, king of hearts. I had jack of spades, nine of diamonds, and I just had a weak gut shot
Yep.
to the 10. You know, and even if I hit the 10, like you can't rule out the fact that he has some ace jack sometimes, right? So it's not even the nuts. He checked. I made a standard C bet on this board. The board definitely favors my range as a pre-flop raiser way more. I have all the nutted hands and he check raised. And this is when the hand got really interesting is him check raising on this board. I think him as the caller pre-flop, game theory wise, like most players will not be choosing to raise on this flop. I just think he'll be facing a lot of re-raises from me again
Right.
just because of the range advantage. You can't have like some sets of sevens, some two pairs, but even those hands, they'll be very happy to just check call and let me continue bluffing and him just bluff catching. So when he decided to raise on this flop, I actually had him weighted towards a lot of flush draws. I think he wouldn't raise too many top pairs here with our stacks behind. I thought the best course of action was to put another bet on the flop and take the initiative. I didn't think calling was going to be profitable often enough to try to hit my hand. So I put in a raise. And then when he just called the flop bet, I was pretty confident he had clubs. And so when the turn came to six of spades and he checked, I decided to pot it to try to fold out all his club draws. Once he check called the 40K, the pot size bet on the turn, Now I was thinking, okay, I think definitely has some king X of clubs, ace X of clubs. To be able to call this turn, he has some type of hand that can still maybe win at showdown. Let's say he has like just a random club draw that doesn't have a high card, like a 9 high flush draw or an 8 high flush draw. He's never check calling the turn because then he's just calling to try to hit his hand. You know, without the initiative and out of position, like he has no plan. Like, what is his play going to be, right? Like, he's never going to get value if a club comes and, well, he just checks and I just check, right? And so I think he's a smart enough player to never check call this turn without some type of showdown value with clubs. And so I had him pinned on king X of clubs, 6X of clubs, or ace X of clubs. I was not blocking any of those hands. The river came the ace of hearts, and I actually thought this was a pretty decent card for me to keep bluffing on. Like, obviously giving up on all clubs. I think this river with the ace, yes, he could have jack 10 of clubs. That was one specific hand that I was very worried about because that was one of the hands that on the turn, it just has too much equity to fold. So those are one of the hands that probably doesn't have much showdown that would just choose a check call by him. But that was the only combo. But I did have a jack in my hand. And so this is what makes this hand very interesting theory-wise, is that we both actually have jacks and we're both blocking jack 10. But him specifically is blocking the jack 10 of clubs. So when he raised all in, he knows that I can't have the jack 10 of clubs. He's worried that I can have jack 10, right? You know, I think we both had similar thought process on the river. We both had the jack in our hand, which is what made this hand what it is. Most players would not choose to bluff raise here with the king. I think he has significant showdown value. I probably wouldn't be doing this with a naked ace with this sizing. I'd overbet 150. I think it was like a 20K over the size of the pot. And I just think that him being able to check raise all in here definitely showed a lot of heart and something that I'm not used to seeing from most of the players that I play with for this amount. I'm not saying for like 50K, 100K. I'm talking about like he had 254,000 before he shoved all in, you know? And the sick part was that it wasn't even that much more. He really put his trust in me in knowing that I could be able to hand read the situation enough if I had a real hand here. Like, let's say I had king, queen, or ace, king, or ace, queen, or the hands I'm supposed to have, right? That I'm trying to represent. Like, he really is putting his trust in me as a poker player to be able to hand read the situation, understand that he has very few bluffs here. I would be throwing up if I had those hands. If I had ace, king, kings, queens, you know? But I think just the pot size, I think it's a little bit reckless, you know? Like, let's be realistic. Like, the pot is massive. I would have to call up another 100K to win like $1 million, right? And so it's reasonable to think that I would just call it off. Exactly. So while I think his bluff was a great move, I think it was a little bit reckless to just assume that I'm willing to fold all my strong made hands here is pretty crazy. Yeah.
It was crazy. Did you learn anything from playing with such a player? He was an interesting player to watch. He does things differently, which is okay. Would you learn anything from Martin watching him?
If anything, I learned how to play more effectively against these type of players. And like, it goes back to what I said in the beginning. I think it's really important to not give information to someone that's actively looking for them. And it's obvious that they're talking in hands not to be social or to be funny, or he likes to be center of attention. He enjoys it. But at the same time, like, you know, players like this have made a lot of their money from exploiting players that are giving away tells like that. And I think if I just didn't speak at all, he would have had much less confidence to make such a play. You know, he's never played with me, right? And so he obviously was able to pick up something. And I think me minimalizing those tells verbally and physically would have worked out much better in this hand.
How did you recover from that hand? Did you feel, obviously everybody would be a bit deflated after that?
Looking back, I'm still pretty happy with the play that I made. I think I can't be results oriented. I think this river is still one that if I had to repeat again, whether it's at a 5-10 game or 400-800 game like we were playing, nothing would change in my decision making. You know, I think I'm still happy with how I thought about the hand on the East Street and the reasoning behind what I did. I just think that it's tougher, definitely for sure, emotionally because of how large it was.
When did this happen that Nick and Santosh left? And tell me the series of events. And then Martin left first, or did they leave and then Martin followed right behind it? And then I watched a bit, some of it today, and then Raymond got up and goes, well, what are we doing? Are we breaking the game? So tell me what happened in your mind.
So Nick and Santosh left together. Lewis, the floor man, came and started racking both of their chips. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like,
right.
You know? I had no idea what's going on at the time. And Lewis was just like, yeah, they're leaving. No explanation. They're leaving. And obviously I was very confused. And, I asked Professor what's going on. And he was like, yeah, I think they're going to a home game. And, I'm like, I knew this was going to break the game. And I knew a lot of these players, like, no offense to like Raymond and things like that, but they were playing very, very conservative that day. And they were obviously waiting for hands and waiting for the spots to win that one big pot and call it a day. And once Nick and Santosh both left, it was very apparent to me that this game was not going to last. And so, yeah, Martin all of a sudden said that he had a meeting to go to. And it was just, I honestly think he was trolling. Like he knew what he was doing. He knew that this was like a troll, but he was doing it to tilt us even more. He knows that we know he's not going to a meeting. He's just being like, yeah, I'm quitting. What are you going to do about it? And so it's fine. It's whatever, like he wanted to leave. He didn't want to sit in. So Martin left, Professor left, Raymond left. And it was just me, Jungle, and Rampage, and we were all stuck in the game. Yeah, it was brutal.
So you didn't know they were going to leave, but you found out later that other people knew about it. Tell me a little bit about that.
I was told later that supposedly Ryan, organizing it, told everybody that this was going to happen, that they were going to leave early. But then he was like, oh, I forgot to tell you. And it was just a miscommunication is what they were saying, and they're saying that other players, some of them knew. And I think the easiest way is just like at the table before a game starts, if people are leaving early, I think someone needs to make the decision to let the table know who is leaving early and at what time, but that wasn't done. And the frustration came because like, this isn't the first time that this happened to me. A recent game where I played, same thing happened where a player decided to win a gigantic pot off me, coolering me with aces versus queens. And soon after decided to rack up and said I had to go. And there was still like 2 hours left to stream, and really frustrating because we were already shorthanded. And same thing, the game just died. Like the action just evaporated.
Right.
I never think it's obligatory to force someone to play, especially if they're losing, But I do think that there's a responsibility of the stream to do whatever they can to make sure like the game doesn't break, and like players that signed up do stay for the full 5 or 6 hours, whatever it is, just because like there's a lot of competition to get a seat, and when you sign up, it's not like a regular game out on the floor where you're like, you put your name up, you get called, you get your seat. This is a stream game where this is a business for them, and like, if you leave, you're essentially affecting the image of their business, like making them look bad, right? And so I think it's fair to require players when they sign up, like, okay, can you commit for the 5 hours? And I think part of that is enforcing in the beginning, is letting every players know, like, under special occasions, this player is leaving at this time. I think everybody should be able to know that.